The high-tech training wing at Nellis Air Force Base hummed with the electric tension of the next generation of top-tier pilots. Inside the multi-million-dollar flight simulators, young recruits, hand-picked for their perfect scores and unshakable confidence, pushed digital airframes to the absolute limit. Among them was Lieutenant Miller, a hotshot who spent more time talking about his potential than studying the manuals. He and his friends often spent their breaks laughing at Elias, the quiet, stoic janitor who had been a fixture of the base for longer than most of them had been alive. Elias was a man of few words, often seen leaning on his mop bucket outside the simulator pods, his eyes fixed on the flickering screens with a deep, unreadable intensity. The recruits called him the Shadow, joking that he was only there to clean up their crashes and that he probably didn't know the difference between an altimeter and a coffee machine. They mocked his shuffling gait and his faded blue coveralls, never noticing the way his hands would instinctively twitch in rhythm with the maneuvers on the screen, as if his fingers still remembered the feel of a joystick under extreme G-forces. The laughter died on a humid Tuesday afternoon when a massive, unpredicted electrical storm rolled over the desert, sending a catastrophic power surge through the base's primary grid. The backup generators kicked in, but the simulator's flight software glitched violently, locking Lieutenant Miller into a high-stress, flat-spin scenario that the computer wouldn't reset. The emergency override failed, and Miller, trapped in the dark, tilting pod, began to panic as the simulated altitude dropped toward zero. The instructors scrambled, their keyboards clicking furiously, but the system was frozen in a death spiral. That was when Elias dropped his mop. With a sudden explosive speed that defied his age, he shoved past the stunned technicians and climbed into the secondary control station. Without looking at the manual, he bypassed the digital interface and began manipulating the raw circuit breakers with a precision that left the room breathless. His voice, usually a raspy whisper, cut through the chaos like a whip, commanding Miller to stop fighting the stick and trust the air. In the dead silence that followed, Elias didn't use the computer's automated recovery program. He flew the glitching system manually, using seat-of-the-pants flying techniques that hadn't been taught in decades. He felt the phantom vibrations of the wings and anticipated the stall before the computer even registered it, pulling the virtual craft out of the spin just as the screens flared back to life. As Miller stumbled out of the pod, pale and shaking, Elias was already stepping down, reaching for his mop as if nothing had happened, but he didn't get far. The base commander, a 3-star general who had rushed into the room during the crisis, stood perfectly still in the center of the floor. He didn't look at the recruits, he looked at the janitor with a face of pure, unfiltered awe. To the shock of the young pilots, the general snapped to a rigid attention and delivered a salute so sharp it could have cut glass. "Welcome back to the cockpit, Colonel," the general whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The general turned to the humbled recruits and revealed the truth that had been hidden in the base's deepest archives. Elias wasn't just a janitor, he was the legendary ace of the Black Widow Squadron, a pilot who had officially retired after a classified mission where he saved an entire carrier group by flying a crippled jet through a hurricane. He stayed on the base as a janitor because he couldn't stand to be away from the sound of engines, preferring to serve in silence rather than live off his fame. Elias simply returned the salute with a tired, humble smile and went back to his work, leaving the recruits to realize that the man they had mocked was the very reason they had a sky to fly in. They learned that day that true mastery doesn't need a high-tech suit or a fancy title. It lives in the soul of the man who knows exactly what to do when the lights go out.